Hello, and welcome to Orthology. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the year is 1718. You're standing on the deck of a wooden ship, the taste of salt spray on your lips, the creak of rope and timber filling your ears. Around you, rough men with weathered faces go about their work under a blazing Caribbean sun. You are not a merchant sailor bound by crushing discipline. You are not pressed into service aboard a king's warship. You are something the civilized world calls an enemy of all mankind. You are a pirate. Tonight, we will step away from the romantic legends and explore what this life truly meant. We will discover why thousands of ordinary sailors chose to live outside the law. We will examine the surprising democracy of their floating republics, the harsh realities of their daily existence, and the brief, violent careers that defined the golden age of piracy. But before we set sail into this world, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It's a simple and wonderful way to support Orthology, and it means a great deal to me. I'm also always curious to know where in the world and at what time you're joining me tonight. So I'd really love to hear from you in the comments. And now, settle in. Let the noise of the modern world fade away. Let us travel back to a time when the skull and crossbones flew over distant waters, and men gambled everything for a taste of freedom on the open sea. To understand why men became pirates, we must first understand the world they were escaping. The early 18th century was an age of empires, of colonial expansion, and of maritime commerce on a scale never before seen. Great merchant fleets crossed the Atlantic and sailed the Caribbean, carrying the wealth of the Americas back to Europe. Sugar from Jamaica, tobacco from Virginia, silver from Mexico, and slaves from Africa. All of this moved on wooden ships, and all of it required sailors. Thousands upon thousands of sailors. These were not men born to privilege. They came from the poorest quarters of London, Bristol, and other port cities. They were farm boys who had fled rural poverty, orphans raised in workhouses, and men with no prospects and no future. The sea was not their dream. It was their only option. And the life that awaited them was one of grinding, relentless misery. A sailor's existence in the merchant service or the Royal Navy was built on a foundation of brutal labor, terrible food, disease, and arbitrary violence. Let us walk through a day in this life, the life that would eventually drive so many into piracy. You wake before dawn in the cramped, damp darkness below deck. You have slept for perhaps 4 hours in a hammock, slung so close to your neighbors that you can feel the heat of their bodies and hear every cough, every snore, every restless movement. The air is thick and foul, heavy with the smell of unwashed men, bilge water, and the sour stench of the wooden ship itself. A harsh voice and the sharp crack of a rope ascend on the beams above signal that your watch is beginning. You climb the ladder to the deck, your joints stiff, your hands already aching before the day's work has even begun. The ocean stretches in every direction, empty and indifferent. There is no land in sight. There has been no land in sight for weeks. Your work is never ending. The ship is a complex machine of wood, rope, and canvas, and it demands constant attention. You haul on lines to adjust the sails, your hands raw despite the calluses that cover them. You climb the rigging, scaling the swaying masts high above the deck, where a single slip means certain death on the planks below or in the churning water. You work the pumps, a monotonous back-breaking task to expel the foul water that constantly seeps into the hull. You scrub the decks, mend torn canvas, tar the ropes, and repair whatever is broken in the night. For this endless labor, you are paid a pittance. But even that small wage comes with a cruel twist. You will not see a single coin until the voyage is complete. If the ship sinks, you get nothing. If you die of disease or accident halfway through the journey, your family receives nothing. And if you survive to reach port, the captain, a man with absolute authority over your life, can invent fines for imagined infractions and deduct them from your pay. A lost tool. A moment of perceived slowness. A word spoken out of turn. All of these can see your wages vanish into the captain's pocket. The food is designed not for nourishment, but for preservation. Your daily ration begins with hardtack, a biscuit baked from flour, water, and salt. It is so hard it can chip your teeth, and it must be soaked in water or weak beer just to be chewed. Even then, you must eat in the dark or close your eyes, for the biscuits are invariably infested with weevils, small black beetles that live in the flour and emerge to float on the surface of your soaking water. Some men try to tap the biscuits on the table to shake the weevils out. Others simply eat them, knowing that the small amount of extra protein might keep them alive. The meat is no better. Salted beef or pork, packed in barrels months or even years ago, so saturated with salt that it must be scraped and soaked for hours before it can be consumed. Even then, it is tough, gray, and nearly tasteless. The salt is a preservative, but it is also slowly poisoning you. Without fresh vegetables or fruit, your body begins to break down. This is scurvy, the sailor's curse. Your gums swell and bleed. Your teeth loosen and fall out. Old wounds reopen. Your mind grows confused. You have seen men die from it, and you know that you too are at risk with every week that passes without fresh food. The water is perhaps worst of all. Stored in wooden casks, it quickly becomes stagnant and foul. A green slime grows on the inside of the barrels, and the water takes on a taste that makes you gag. Most ships solve this problem by issuing a daily ration of beer or rum mixed with water, a drink called grog. The alcohol makes the water drinkable and provides a brief, blessed moment of warmth and escape in an otherwise intolerable existence. But the hardship of the work and the poverty of the food pail in comparison to the violence of the discipline. The captain of a merchant ship or a naval vessel is an absolute monarch in his wooden kingdom. His word is law, and his primary tool of enforcement is pain. For the smallest offense, a sailor can be flogged. The weapon is the cat o' 9 tails, a whip with 9 separate knotted cords. The punishment is carried out in front of the assembled crew, a public spectacle designed to instill fear. A sailor is tied to a grating, his back exposed. The boatswain or another officer administers the lashes. Each strike tears the skin, leaving bloody welts that will take weeks to heal. A dozen lashes is considered a light punishment. 2 or 3 dozen can leave a man's back a ruin of shredded flesh. There is no appeal, no trial, no justice. If the captain dislikes you, if an officer has taken offense at a perceived slight, if you are simply too slow or too tired, you can be whipped. And if the captain decides you are a troublemaker, he can order you keel-hauled, a punishment so brutal it is often fatal. You are tied to a rope that passes under the ship's keel. You are thrown overboard on one side, and the crew hauls you under the barnacle-encrusted hull to the other side. If you survive the drowning, the barnacles will have flayed the skin from your body. In the Royal Navy, the situation is even worse. Many sailors are not there by choice. They have been pressed into service, kidnapped from the streets by press gangs, armed thugs working for the Navy who seize any man of the right age and drag him aboard a warship. Once pressed, there is no escape. Desertion is punishable by death. And the discipline is even harsher, the work even more dangerous, for you are not just sailing. You are training to fight and die in a naval battle. This, then, is the world of the common sailor in the early 18th century. A world of endless labor, stolen wages, rotting food, and the constant threat of the lash. It is a life with no future, no hope, and no dignity. And it is this world, this grinding, brutal existence, that explains why so many men, when given the choice, chose piracy. They did not become pirates because they loved violence or craved treasure. They became pirates because piracy offered something their old lives never had: a voice, a share, and a measure of freedom. The day begins like any other. You are on watch, squinting against the glare of the sun on the water, when the lookout's cry echoes down from the crow's nest. Sail ho! All hands on deck freeze. Every eye turns to the horizon. There, growing larger with each passing minute, is another ship. Your captain is shouting orders, his voice tight with alarm. The crew scrambles to respond, adjusting sails, preparing the few small cannons your merchant vessel carries. But you can see it in the captain's face. He knows, as you all do, that this is no merchant ship approaching. It is too fast, too purposeful. It is a predator, and you are the prey. The strange vessel is a sloop, smaller than your ship, but infinitely more agile. As it draws closer, you see its deck is crowded with men, far more than would be needed for a simple trading voyage. They move with confidence, with purpose. And then, without warning, a puff of white smoke blossoms from the sloop's side. A second later, the deep boom of a cannon echoes across the water. A cannonball skips across the waves just ahead of your bow, sending up a spray of white foam. It is a warning shot, the universal signal of the sea. Stop, or the next one will not miss. Your captain's face has gone pale. He knows the odds. His ship is slower. His crew is smaller. His cargo is insured by wealthy men in London who will not thank him for getting killed defending it. He gives the order. Strike the colors. Lower the flag. Surrender. The pirate's sloop glides alongside with practiced ease. Grappling hooks fly through the air, iron claws biting into your ship's railing. The two vessels are lashed together, and then the pirates are aboard. They come over the side in a rush, but this is not the chaotic mob you might have imagined. They move like a well-trained crew, organized and efficient. Each man is armed, pistols tucked into belts, cutlasses hanging at their sides. But there is no immediate violence, no wild slaughter. Instead, they quickly disarm your officers and gather your crew on the main deck. You stand there, heart pounding, expecting the worst. You have heard the stories, the tales told in taverns about pirates who torture their captives, who murder without mercy. But what happens next surprises you. A man steps forward. He is not dressed like a captain, not in the fine coat and tricorn hat you might expect. He looks like any other sailor, his clothes worn, his face weathered by sun and salt. But the crew defers to him, and he speaks with calm authority. This, you will learn, is the quartermaster, the second most important man on a pirate ship, and in many ways, the most powerful. His voice is steady, even friendly. He tells your crew that they mean no harm to common sailors. They are here for the cargo, not for your lives. The officers, the captain and his mates, are a different matter. The pirates clearly despise them. They are roughly handled, relieved of their weapons, their fine coats, their money. One of the pirates spits at the captain's feet. You understand the hatred. These men were once in your position, and they remember every insult, every injustice, every lash of the whip. Then the quartermaster makes his offer, and this is the moment that will change everything. He tells you that any man who wishes to join their company is welcome. There will be no force, no coercion. The choice is yours. You can stay with your captain and continue your voyage, or you can cross over and join them. If you join, you will be a free man, entitled to an equal vote in all matters and an equal share of every prize they take. You will live by their articles, their laws, but those laws are fair, agreed upon by the entire crew. You look around at your fellow sailors. Most are silent, their faces frozen in fear or indecision. They have families, homes, and a deep terror of the hangman's noose. But a few, like you, have nothing to lose. You see the same spark in their eyes that you feel kindling in your own chest. The quartermaster is not finished. He knows that actions speak louder than words. He orders his men to bring up some of the cargo they've already claimed from your ship. Barrels are cracked open. There is wine, far better than anything you've ever tasted. There is fresh bread, still soft, and salted ham that has been properly cured, not the gray, leathery meat you've been choking down. The pirates eat and drink freely, and they invite you and your crew to join them. It is a calculated gesture, a glimpse of the life they are offering. You see one of the pirates, a young man not much older than yourself, grinning as he tears into a piece of bread. He catches your eye and laughs. "Better than weevils, eh?" he says, and in that moment the decision crystallizes. You have spent years being hungry, being afraid, being beaten. You have worked yourself to exhaustion for men who care nothing for you, who see you as nothing more than a tool to be used and discarded. This, then, is your chance. It may be a short life, but it will be your own. You step forward. 2 other sailors from your crew do the same. The quartermaster's grin widens. "Welcome, brothers," he says. And just like that, you are no longer a merchant sailor. You are a pirate. The pirates allow your old ship to sail on, poorer by a few men, and a hold full of cargo, but intact. You climb over the railing onto the pirate sloop, leaving your old life behind with each step. One of the pirates hands you a tin mug filled with rum, cut with a bit of lime juice and water. You drink, and the warmth spreads through your chest. It is not just the alcohol. It is the realization that for the first time in your life, you have made a choice that was truly yours. You stand on the deck of your new ship, the mug of rum still warm in your hands, surrounded by men who were, until moments ago, complete strangers. You are one of them now, but you do not yet understand what that truly means. The question is heavy in your mind. You have joined a crew of outlaws, men who have rejected all authority. How can a ship full of such men possibly function without tearing itself apart? The answer comes quickly. The quartermaster, the same man who welcomed you aboard, gathers you and the other new recruits. He produces a worn sheet of parchment and unrolls it carefully. "This," he explains, "is the foundation of everything. These are the ship's articles, the pirate code. And you are about to learn that you have not joined a lawless mob. You have joined a society with rules more fair and more democratic than any you have ever known." The quartermaster begins to read aloud, his voice carrying over the creak of the ship and the lap of the waves. The first article is the most important, and it is the one that will define your entire experience as a pirate. Every man has an equal vote in affairs of moment. This is not merely a formality. It is the absolute bedrock of pirate society. On this ship you, a man who was nobody, who owned nothing, who had no power, now have a voice equal to that of every other man aboard, including the captain himself. Any major decision, the quartermaster explains, is put to a vote. Should we attack that merchant ship on the horizon? Should we sail north to the Carolinas or south to the Caribbean? What punishment should be given to a man who has broken the articles? Every man votes, and the majority decides. It is a form of democracy that would be considered radical, even dangerous, in the world you have left behind. In England, only men who own property can vote. Here, every pirate, regardless of his past, has an equal say. The second article addresses the matter closest to your heart: payment. The quartermaster is blunt. There are no wages on a pirate ship. No master will dole out a pittance at the end of a voyage, only to cheat you with invented fines. Instead, you will share in the plunder. Every prize taken, every coin seized, every barrel of goods captured will be divided according to a clear and agreed-upon formula. The captain, because of his skill and responsibility, receives 2 shares. The quartermaster receives 1.5. Specialists, men whose skills are vital, the surgeon, the carpenter, the master gunner, may receive 1.25 shares. But you, an ordinary member of the crew, are entitled to 1 full share. It is yours by right, not by the captain's whim. There are no deductions, no tricks, no theft. What is yours is yours. This system, you realize, changes everything. On your old ship, you were expendable. Here, you are a shareholder in a collective enterprise. Every risk you take, every prize you help capture, directly benefits you. The harder you work, the more you gain. And because every man stands to profit equally, there is no resentment, no sense that one man is growing rich while another suffers. The third article surprises you. It concerns conduct aboard the ship. Quarrels between crewmen are strictly forbidden while at sea. If two men have a dispute, it must be settled on shore, and it must be settled fairly. They are to go ashore, back to back, and walk a set number of paces. Then they turn and fire their pistols, or fight with swords. It is formalized, controlled violence, designed to prevent the kind of spontaneous brawls that could spiral out of control and threaten the ship itself. The article makes sense. In the confined space of a ship, where men live in constant proximity, tempers can flare quickly. This rule ensures that personal grudges do not endanger the entire crew. Another article forbids women and boys from being brought aboard. This is not, as you might think, a matter of morality. It is, like the rule about quarrels, a practical measure to prevent jealousy and conflict. A woman aboard ship could become a source of competition and resentment among the men, and that kind of tension is a threat to the fragile social order. Then there are the articles that govern daily life. Lights and candles are to be extinguished at 8 o'clock at night. This is not a curfew. It is a matter of survival. A single carelessly placed candle could ignite the ship's dry wood or, worse, the barrels of gunpowder stored below. Fire is the greatest fear of every sailor, and this rule is non-negotiable. Every man must keep his weapons clean and ready for action at all times. Your pistol, your cutlass, your musket, all must be maintained. A weapon that misfires in the heat of battle could cost not just your life, but the lives of your brothers. And then comes the article that astonishes you most, the compensation for injuries. This is something you have never heard of, not in the merchant service, not in the Royal Navy, not anywhere. The article states clearly that any man who loses a limb or an eye in the service of the ship will be compensated from the common treasury before any plunder is divided. The loss of a right arm, the most devastating injury for a working man, is worth 600 pieces of eight. A leg, 500. An eye, 100. These are not small sums. They represent months or even years of wages in the world you left behind. This article is more than just a financial arrangement. It is a promise. It is the crew's way of saying that if you are maimed in their service, they will take care of you. You will not be cast aside, left to beg on the streets, or die in a gutter. You will be given enough money to live, to perhaps start a small business, to survive. It is a level of care and solidarity that is unheard of in the brutal world of the 18th century. The quartermaster finishes reading and looks at you and the other new recruits. This is the contract, he says. These are the laws we live by. If you agree to them, you will sign. He places the parchment on the lid of a barrel and offers a quill and ink. One by one, the new men step forward. Some can write their names. Others make a simple mark, an X or a crude drawing. It does not matter. What matters is the act itself. By signing, you are swearing an oath. You are entering into a sacred bond with these men, agreeing to live by these rules, and to accept the severe punishments if you break them. You take the quill. The ink is thick, and the nib scratches on the rough parchment. You sign your name or your mark, and in that moment, you are no longer just a pirate. You are a member of the Brotherhood, a citizen of this floating republic. You have rights now and responsibilities. You have a voice and a share. And you have brothers who will stand with you, not because they are forced to, but because they have chosen to. The quartermaster rolls up the articles and tucks them away. Welcome, he says again, and this time the word carries a weight it did not have before. you are home. With the formalities complete, you take your first real look around the ship that is now your home. This is no grand warship, no towering galleon. It is a sloop, a smaller vessel, but you quickly understand why it was chosen. It is fast, lean, and purpose-built for the work of piracy. Speed and maneuverability are worth more than size in this line of work. The ship is perhaps 70 feet long, with a single tall mast and a large triangular sail. Unlike the cluttered merchant ships you've known, this deck has been cleared of anything unnecessary. Every inch of space is used efficiently. You see cannons, more than a merchant ship would carry, their black iron muzzles pointing out from newly cut gun ports. There are neat coils of rope, stacks of cannonballs secured with rope netting, and spare spars lashed to the sides, ready to replace any that might be shot away in battle. You walk the length of the deck, taking it all in. The wood is worn smooth by countless bare feet, darkened by salt spray and the sun. The smell is familiar, the smell of every ship you've ever known. Tar and salt, damp wood and rope, and underneath it all, the faint sour stench of the bilge. But there is something different here, a sense of purpose, of readiness. This ship is a weapon, and every man aboard knows it. One of the crew, a grizzled sailor with a scar running down his cheek, notices you looking around and comes over. He introduces himself as Tom and offers to show you the ship properly. You follow him, grateful for the guidance. He points out the key features: the helm, where the steersman controls the rudder; the capstan, a large wooden winch used to raise the anchor; the hatch that leads below to the hold, and the living quarters. Tom leads you to the hatch and gestures for you to climb down. You descend the ladder into the dimness below. As your eyes adjust, you see that this is where the crew lives. There are no cabins, no private rooms. This single low-ceilinged space is where every man sleeps. Hammocks are slung from the overhead beams, row upon row of them, hung so close together that they nearly touch. Tom explains that you'll be assigned a spot and given your own hammock. It's not much, but it's yours. The air down here is thick and warm, heavy with the smell of men living in close quarters. There is no privacy, no escape. You will eat, sleep, and live within arm's reach of 80 other men. Tom sees the look on your face and laughs. You get used to it, he says. And it's better than the cold and wet on deck. He shows you the hammock system, explaining that it's a brilliant invention, borrowed from the native peoples of the Americas. Unlike a bunk, which would slide and shift with the rolling of the ship, a hammock sways with the motion, cradling you and keeping you from being thrown to the floor during rough seas. You'll sleep better here than you ever did on a merchant ship, he promises. Tom takes you deeper into the ship, to the very bottom, where the cargo is stored. Here, you see the barrels of water and beer, sacks of flour and dried beans, and the most recent prizes, goods seized from captured ships. There are also the ship's weapons, racks of muskets, pistols, cutlasses, and boarding axes. Everything is secured, lashed down so it won't shift if the ship rolls in a storm. And then there is the bilge. Tom points to the dark, inaccessible space at the very bottom of the hull. This, he says, is where all the foul water collects. Seawater that leaks through the planks, spilled drink, and all other manner of filth. It cannot be avoided. Every ship has a bilge, and it always stinks. The smell permeates the wood itself, a sour, rotten odor that you will never entirely escape. It is the smell of the ship, and it will become as familiar to you as your own breath. Back on deck, Tom shows you the weapons you'll be expected to use. He hands you a cutlass, a short, heavy sword with a slightly curved blade and a sturdy basket hilt to protect your hand. It's not a graceful weapon, not like the rapiers gentlemen use in duels. It's a tool designed for brutal, close-quarters fighting. The weight of it feels good in your hand, solid and reassuring. Tom also shows you a pistol, a flintlock with a smoothbore barrel. He explains that it's only accurate at very close range, and it's good for one shot. After that, you use it as a club or draw your cutlass. Most pirates, he says, carry 2 or even 3 pistols tucked into their belts, giving them multiple shots before they have to resort to steel. As the sun begins to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, you stand at the railing and look out over the water. The ship rises and falls gently with the swell, and for the first time in years, you feel something like peace. This is your ship now. These are your brothers. And tomorrow, the real work begins. You wake to the sound of the ship's bell and the call of the watch. It is still dark, the sky just beginning to lighten in the east. You roll out of your hammock, your muscles stiff, and climb the ladder to the deck. The air is cool and fresh, a relief after the close warmth below. Around you, other men are stirring, rubbing sleep from their eyes, stretching, preparing for the day ahead. You quickly learn that life on a pirate ship, despite its promise of freedom, is not a life of leisure. A ship is a machine, and it requires constant work to keep it running. Your day is governed by the watch system, the same system used on every ship. The crew is divided into 2 watches, and each watch works for 4 hours, then rests for 4 hours in a cycle that repeats endlessly. There are no days off, no weekends. There is only the watch. During your time on duty, the work is familiar. You adjust the sails, trimming them to catch the wind most efficiently. This is skilled work, a constant conversation between the crew and the elements. The wind is never steady. It shifts, strengthens, weakens. The sails must be adjusted constantly, and this means hauling on ropes, thick lines made stiff and rough by salt and tar. Your hands, already calloused from years at sea, grow harder still. You spend hours on maintenance. Caulking is a daily task, sitting on the deck with a mallet and a chisel, hammering sticky, tarred rope fibers called oakum into the seams between the planks. It is tedious, mind-numbing work, but it is essential. Without it, the ship would leak, and a leaking ship is a sinking ship. You also tar the rigging, coating the ropes with sticky black pitch to protect them from the sun and salt. The tar gets everywhere, on your hands, your clothes, your face. It is impossible to stay clean. You scrub the decks, not just to keep them tidy, but to scour away the slippery green algae that grows in the damp sea air. You check the cannons, ensuring they are secure, that their mechanisms are clean, that the gunpowder stored nearby is kept dry. Every task is important. A neglected cannon could explode. A frayed rope could snap at a critical moment. A loose spar could fall and kill a man. Sometimes you are assigned to lookout duty. You climb the rigging to the crow's nest, a small platform near the top of the mast. The climb is harrowing at first, the ship swaying beneath you, the deck growing smaller and smaller below. But once you reach the top, the view is extraordinary. You can see for miles in every direction, a vast circle of blue water and open sky. Your job is to watch, to scan the horizon for any sign of another ship. This is what the entire enterprise depends on. Finding a prize, the hours in the crow's nest are long and lonely. The sun beats down and the wind whips at your clothes. You squint into the glare, searching for the telltale triangle of a sail. Your mind wanders. You think about your old life, about the choices that brought you here. And you watch. When your watch ends, you climb down and are relieved by another man. You have 4 hours now to rest, to eat, to sleep. But rest is not always easy. You are exhausted, but the ship is never quiet. There is always the creak of the timbers, the snap of the sails, the shouts of the men on duty. You learn to sleep through it, to find rest in the gentle rocking of your hammock. The food, while better than what you endured on the merchant ship, is still monotonous. Breakfast is often burgoo, a kind of porridge made from oatmeal and water, sometimes with a bit of molasses or sugar if supplies allow. The midday meal is salt meat, usually pork, boiled until it is soft enough to eat, served with dried peas or beans. Supper is more of the same. You wash it all down with your daily ration of grog, the rum and water mixture that is the lifeblood of every sailor. But here, there is a difference. The quartermaster ensures that every man gets his fair share. There is no favoritism, no officer taking the best portions while the crew gets scraps. Everyone eats the same food, from the captain down to the newest recruit. It is a small thing, but it matters. It is a constant reminder that you are equals. The work is hard, but it is not done under the threat of the lash. There is no boatswain screaming insults at you, no officer threatening you with a flogging. The men work because the ship is theirs. A well-maintained ship is faster, safer, more likely to catch a prize. You are not working for a master. You are working for yourself and your brothers. In the evenings, after the day's labor is done, the character of the ship changes. Men gather on deck in small groups. Someone produces a fiddle, and the sound of music drifts across the water. It is a mournful, beautiful sound, a sea shanty or a ballad. You learn the songs, joining in on the chorus. The music is a form of connection, a way for men to share their stories and their emotions without words. There are games, too. Men gamble with dice or cards, wagering their shares of future prizes, their rations of rum, or simply playing for the fun of it. You join in, learning the rules, losing more often than you win, but enjoying the camaraderie. There is laughter here, something you heard rarely on your old ship. These men, despite the danger they face, despite the short, violent lives they are likely to lead, are happy in a way you have never seen before. The days blend together, marked only by the changing of the watch and the slow progress of the ship across the empty ocean. But you are not bored. You are learning, growing stronger, becoming a part of this crew. And always, in the back of your mind, is the knowledge that at any moment, the cry could come from the crow's nest. Sail ho, and then everything will change. The cry comes in the early morning, just as the sun is breaking over the horizon. Sail ho! The voice from the crow's nest is urgent, excited. Every man on deck stops what he is doing and looks to the lookout, then to the horizon. You shade your eyes against the glare and see it. A distant sail, a pale triangle against the blue. The captain appears on deck, moving quickly. He takes the spyglass and climbs partway up the rigging for a better view. The entire crew watches in silence, waiting. After a long moment, he lowers the glass and calls out his assessment. It's a merchant ship, heavily loaded, sitting low in the water. It's sailing alone, no escort. It's perfect. The captain gives the orders, and the ship springs to life. Men scramble to adjust the sails, angling them to catch every breath of wind. The helmsman turns the wheel, pointing the bow directly at the distant ship. The chase is on. Your sloop is faster, far faster than the heavy merchant vessel, but the chase is not instantaneous. It takes time, sometimes hours, to close the distance. You are put to work, ensuring everything is ready for what is to come. The cannons are loaded and primed. Weapons are distributed. Cutlasses are sharpened. Pistols are checked. There is a tension in the air, a mixture of excitement and fear. This is what you signed up for, and now it is happening. As you draw closer, the captain orders a flag to be raised. You watch as the crew unfurls the English colors, the Union Jack. This is a ruse, a common trick. From a distance, you appear to be just another English merchant ship. The target has no reason to panic, not yet. You can see the merchant ship clearly now, close enough to make out the figures of men on its deck. They have seen you, but they have not yet realized the danger. They continue on their course, perhaps even relieved to see another ship in these lonely waters. The distance closes. Half a mile, a quarter mile. You are close enough now to see the crew of the merchant ship moving about their duties, unaware of what is about to happen. And then the captain gives the order, strike the colors. The English flag comes down. For a moment, your mast is bare. And then, with a flourish, a new flag is raised. It is black, stark against the blue sky. And on that black field is a white skull above two crossed bones. The Jolly Roger, the flag of piracy. You see the effect it has on the merchant ship. Even from this distance, you can sense the panic. Men are running across the deck. Their captain is shouting orders. They know now what you are, and they know what is coming. The captain of your ship watches through his spyglass, gauging their response. Will they run? Will they fight? The merchant ship attempts to turn, to flee, but it is too late. Your sloop is too fast, and you are already alongside. The captain gives the order. Fire a warning shot. The cannon crew springs into action. They have been waiting for this moment, and their movements are practiced and efficient. The gunner applies the slow match to the touch hole. There is a hiss, and then the cannon roars, a deafening explosion that shakes the entire ship. A plume of white smoke billows out, and you see the cannonballs skip across the water, landing just ahead of the merchant ship's bow. The message is clear. Stop or we sink you. The merchant captain, faced with a choice between futile resistance and survival, makes the only logical decision. You watch as their flag is lowered. They are surrendering. The chase is over, and you have won without firing a shot in anger. Your ship pulls alongside, and the boarding party prepares. Grappling hooks are readied. Pistols are checked one last time. You are part of this group, and your heart is pounding. This is your first real action as a pirate, and you do not know what to expect. The grappling hooks fly through the air and bite into the merchant ship's railing. Men haul on the ropes, pulling the two vessels together until they touch with a grinding crunch of wood on wood. And then, with a roar, the boarding party surges over the side. You go with them, cutlass in one hand, a loaded pistol in the other. You land on the merchant ship's deck, ready for a fight, but there is none. The crew has laid down their weapons. They stand in a group, hands raised, faces pale with fear. The captain is among them, his fine coat and hat marking him out. He looks furious and terrified in equal measure. The quartermaster takes charge immediately. He orders the merchant crew to be secured, not harmed. They are herded to one side of the deck and made to sit. Guards are posted to watch them, but there is no violence. The quartermaster's voice is firm but calm. We mean no harm to honest sailors, he calls out. Do as you're told, and you'll come to no hurt. Then the real work begins, the inventory. The quartermaster and a team of trusted men descend into the merchant ship's hold to see what they have captured. You and others remain on deck, weapons ready, watching the prisoners. The merchant sailors look at you with a mixture of fear and curiosity. They see men like themselves, dressed in rough, worn clothes, speaking with familiar accents. You are not monsters. You are sailors who made a different choice. After what feels like hours, the quartermaster emerges from the hold, a satisfied smile on his face. The cargo is valuable. Barrels of sugar and rum, bales of tobacco, and best of all, several small chests of coins, payment for goods already sold. This is a rich prize. The work of transferring the cargo begins. It is hard, sweaty labor, hauling heavy barrels and crates from one ship to the other, but there is a lightness to it. Every barrel you carry is money in your pocket. Every chest is a share that will be divided fairly among the crew. You work with a will, and the hours pass quickly. As the cargo is moved, the quartermaster makes the offer you have heard before. Any of the merchant crew who wishes to join is welcome. A few step forward, young men with nothing to lose. They are welcomed aboard, and you remember how you felt when you made that same choice. The rest, the older men with families, decline. They will be allowed to sail on with their ship, poorer but alive. When the work is done and the two ships separate, you stand at the railing and watch the merchant vessel limp away. You feel a strange mixture of emotions: pride in what you have accomplished, relief that no one was killed, and a growing sense of belonging. You are a pirate now, in deed as well as in name. The ship sails on for several days after the capture, heading toward a safe harbor. The cargo is secured in the hold, and there is a sense of satisfaction among the crew. You have taken a prize, and it was done cleanly, efficiently, without bloodshed. This is the ideal pirate attack, and everyone knows it. Finally, the call comes. Land ho! You see it on the horizon, a low green line that grows into an island covered in palm trees. This is one of the pirate havens, a place where the authorities do not reach, where ships can anchor without fear of the Royal Navy. As you sail into the harbor, you see other vessels at anchor, some flying black flags, others with no colors at all. This is a gathering place for men like you. The ship drops anchor, and boats are lowered to row ashore. You are among the first to go, eager to set foot on solid ground after weeks at sea. The beach is crowded with people. There are other pirates, merchants who trade with them, women from the nearby settlements, and a general atmosphere of chaotic freedom. But before the revelry begins, there is business to attend to. The quartermaster calls the entire crew together in a clearing near the beach. This is the moment you have been waiting for, the division of the plunder. The quartermaster stands before you all with several ledgers and the small chests of coins taken from the merchant ship. He begins by addressing the first obligation, the ship's treasury. Any man who was injured in the taking of the prize, though this time there were none, would be compensated first. This is the promise written in the articles, and it is always honored. With that formality completed, the quartermaster moves on to the main event. He has already tallied the total value of the cargo sold to the merchants in the harbor. He announces the sum, and there is a murmur of approval through the crew. It is a good haul, better than anyone expected. The division is done in full view of everyone. There is no secrecy, no backroom deals. The quartermaster calls out each man's name in turn, starting with the captain. The captain steps forward and receives his 2 shares, counted out in silver and gold coins. The coins clink as they are dropped into a leather bag. Then the quartermaster himself takes his 1.5 shares. Then the specialists, each receiving their due according to the articles. And then it is the turn of the ordinary crew. Your name is called. You step forward, and the quartermaster counts out your single share. The coins are heavy, cold, and real. You have never held this much money in your life. This is more than you could have earned in a year, perhaps 2 years, of honest labor on a merchant ship, and it is yours. No one can take it from you. No captain can invent a fine to steal it. It is the fruit of your labor and your risk, fairly divided. You take your share and step back into the crowd, the weight of the coins a physical reminder of what you have accomplished. Around you, other men are receiving their shares, and the mood is jubilant. This is what it is all about. Not just the money, though that matters. It is the fairness of it, the knowledge that every man got what he earned. With the division complete, the quartermaster dismisses the crew. You are free to go ashore, to spend your money as you see fit. And the crew, after weeks of discipline and hard work, is ready to let loose. The settlement near the beach is unlike any place you have ever been. There is no governor here, no soldiers, no law. It is a place built by and for pirates, a ramshackle collection of wooden taverns, tents, and hastily constructed huts. The air smells of roasting meat, rum, and the sea. Everywhere you look, there are people, pirates from a dozen different ships, their clothes worn and their faces weathered. Merchants offering goods for sale, everything from weapons to fine fabrics. And women, some local, some who have come here seeking the easy money that flows through this lawless place. You and a group of your crewmates head for the largest tavern, a long, low building with a thatched roof and walls that are more gaps than planks. Inside, it is dim and crowded and loud. The floor is packed dirt, and the tables are rough planks laid across barrels. The noise is overwhelming, a roar of voices, laughter, and arguments, all fueled by rum. You push your way to the bar, a long plank of wood supported by more barrels, and trade one of your silver coins for a bottle of rum. Not the watered-down grog of shipboard life, but the real thing, strong and fiery. You take a drink, and it burns all the way down, but it is glorious. This is freedom. This is what you fought for. The hours blur together. You drink, you eat roasted pork until you are full for the first time in memory, and you talk with your crewmates. The stories flow as freely as the rum. Men boast about past exploits, exaggerate their own bravery, and laugh at the absurdity of their lives. You are part of this now, part of the brotherhood. In one corner of the tavern, a group of men are gambling, throwing dice on a barrelhead. You wander over to watch. The stakes are high, men betting their shares on the roll of the dice. You see a man lose a month's worth of plunder on a single unlucky throw. He laughs, drinks, and places another bet. This is the pirate philosophy in action. Tomorrow is not guaranteed, so live for today. You spend freely, recklessly. You buy a new shirt, soft linen that feels like a luxury against your skin. You buy a fine new pistol, beautifully balanced, with an intricate lock mechanism. You eat and drink and gamble. The money that seemed like a fortune when it was counted into your hand is disappearing quickly, but you do not care. This is what it is for. The days on shore blend together in a haze of indulgence. You sleep in a hammock strung between two palm trees, wake with a pounding head, and start the cycle again. You are living more intensely, more freely than you ever have before. There is no tomorrow, no future. There is only now. But eventually, inevitably, you reach into your pocket and find it nearly empty. Your share, which seemed so vast, is almost gone. You have spent it on pleasures that have already faded into blurred memories, and you are not alone. All around you, your crewmates are in the same situation. And then, as if on cue, the call goes out. The quartermaster is gathering the crew. The ship has been resupplied, the hull has been scraped clean of barnacles, and it is time to return to the sea, time to hunt for another prize. You make your way back to the beach, your head still aching, your pockets light. You climb into the boat and are rowed back to the ship. As you step aboard, the chaos of the shore fades behind you. The ship is orderly, purposeful. This is where you belong. And as the anchor is raised and the sails are set, you realize that the cycle is beginning again. The long, disciplined weeks at sea, the hunt, the capture, the division, and the wild days on shore. This is the rhythm of the pirate's life, and you are a part of it now. Life as a pirate, for all its promise of freedom and plunder, is not without its dangers. The threat of violence is constant, but it is not the only risk. There are other enemies, less dramatic, but just as deadly, that stalk every sailor in this age. The first and most persistent is disease. Ships are breeding grounds for illness. The close quarters, the poor sanitation, the lack of fresh food, all conspire to weaken men's bodies and make them vulnerable. You have seen men brought low by fevers, their bodies burning with heat, their minds wandering in delirium. Some recover. Many do not. Dysentery is common, a miserable affliction that leaves men weak and dehydrated. It spreads quickly through the crew, passed from man to man in the confined space below deck. There is little that can be done except to wait it out and hope that your body is strong enough to survive. And then there is scurvy, the old curse of the sailor. Despite the pirates' ability to supplement their diet with fresh meat and fruit when they raid or stop at islands, long voyages still take their toll. You have seen the signs. Gums that swell and bleed, teeth that loosen and fall out, old wounds that reopen as if they had never healed. A man with advanced scurvy is a pitiful sight, his body literally falling apart. The only cure is fresh food, particularly citrus fruit, but on a long voyage, that is not always available. When a man is injured, either in battle or by accident, the ship's surgeon becomes the most important person aboard. If your crew has been fortunate enough to capture a trained surgeon and convince him to join, or better yet, if one volunteered, you are lucky. A skilled surgeon can set broken bones, stitch wounds, and perform the brutal but necessary amputations that are sometimes the only way to save a man's life. But many pirate ships do not have a trained surgeon. The role falls to whoever has the most relevant skills, often the ship's carpenter. The logic is grimly practical. The most common surgery at sea is amputation, and no one aboard is better with a saw than the carpenter. He knows how to make a clean, swift cut. He is not squeamish, and he understands that speed is essential. You have not witnessed an amputation yet, but you have heard the stories. A man is injured in battle. A cannonball shatters his leg, or his arm is mangled in a fall. If the limb is too damaged to save, it must come off. To leave it is to invite gangrene, a deadly infection that will spread through the body and kill within days. The surgery is performed on deck, in full view of the crew. There is no privacy, no dignity. A man is given as much rum or laudanum as can be spared to dull the pain. He is held down by his crewmates, for he will thrash and scream despite the drugs. A leather strap is placed between his teeth to keep him from biting through his tongue. The carpenter works quickly. The flesh is cut first, pulled back to expose the bone. Then the saw. The sound is terrible, the grating of metal on bone. The man's screams are worse, but the carpenter does not stop. He cannot stop. The limb must come off. When it is done, the stump is cauterized with a red-hot iron or a dollop of boiling tar, sealing the wound and stopping the bleeding. The smell of burning flesh fills the air. If the man survives the surgery, and many do not, he is carried below and left to heal. The crew does what it can for him. He is given the best food available, extra rations of rum, and a place in a hammock where he can rest. And if he lives, if the wound does not become infected, if he is strong enough, he will eventually recover. And when the next prize is taken and the plunder is divided, he will receive his compensation. 600 pieces of 8 for an arm, 500 for a leg. It is not enough, not really, but it is more than most men in his position could ever hope for. This system of compensation, this promise that the crew will take care of its wounded, is one of the things that binds the pirate brotherhood together. It is a promise that sets them apart from the brutal world they left behind, where an injured sailor is simply discarded. But even with this safety net, the risks are real. You know that every time you climb the rigging, every time you board an enemy ship, every time you stand on deck during a storm, you are gambling with your life. And yet, you have made your choice. This life, short and dangerous as it may be, is still better than the alternative. For all the talk of plunder and freedom, none of it would be possible without one essential skill: navigation. The ability to find your way across the vast, featureless expanse of the ocean is what separates a successful pirate ship from a doomed one. Without it, you are lost, condemned to wander the sea until your food and water run out. You watch the captain at his work with a growing respect. He is the ship's navigator, the man who can read the stars and the sun, can translate them into a course. His tools are few but ingenious, and his knowledge is the product of years of experience. The most basic tool is the compass. It is a simple device, a magnetized needle floating in a bowl of liquid, always pointing north. With the compass, the captain can set a bearing. If he wants to sail west, he points the ship so that the needle shows north is to his right. If he wants to sail east, North is to his left. It is simple, but essential. But knowing your direction is only half the puzzle. You must also know your speed. For this, the captain uses the chip log. It is a small wooden board tied to a long rope with knots tied at regular intervals. The board is thrown overboard, and as the ship moves forward, the rope unspools. A sailor holds the rope and counts how many knots pass through his hands in a measured amount of time, tracked with a small sandglass. The number of knots gives the ship's speed in knots, a unit that is still used today. With direction and speed, the captain can begin to plot the ship's course. But there is one more crucial piece of information he needs: position. Specifically, latitude, how far north or south of the equator the ship is. To determine latitude, the captain uses an instrument called a quadrant, or, if the ship has a finer one, a sextant. At noon, when the sun is at its highest point, he measures the angle between the horizon and the sun. This angle changes depending on how far north or south you are. Near the equator, the sun is almost directly overhead. Further north, it is lower in the sky. By measuring this angle and consulting a set of tables, the captain can calculate the ship's latitude with reasonable accuracy. At night, the process is even simpler in these northern waters. The captain measures the height of the North Star above the horizon. The angle is almost exactly equal to the ship's latitude. It is a gift from the heavens, a fixed point in the turning sky. But there is one piece of the puzzle that remains unsolved: longitude, the ship's position east or west. There is no simple way to measure this. The stars do not help. The sun does not help. It is the great problem of navigation, and it will not be solved for another century. In the meantime, sailors rely on dead reckoning. Dead reckoning is more art than science. The captain starts from a known position, usually the last port. He knows the ship's bearing from the compass and the ship's speed from the chip log. Every day, he plots the course on his chart, drawing a line from the ship's estimated position in the direction it has traveled at the speed it has been moving. After 24 hours of sailing east at 5 knots, he calculates that the ship has moved 120 nautical miles east. He marks this on the chart. But dead reckoning is an estimate, and estimates accumulate errors. A strong current can push the ship off course without anyone noticing. A storm can drive the ship miles in an unintended direction. A small mistake in measuring speed or direction can grow larger with each passing day. After a week or two at sea, the ship's actual position and its position on the chart can be miles apart. To compensate, the captain uses every clue the ocean provides. He reads the color of the water. Shallow water near land is a lighter blue or green. Deep ocean water is dark. He watches the birds. Certain species do not fly far from land. If you see a pelican, you know the shore is near. He studies the clouds. A low, stationary cloud on the horizon often forms over an island. He even tastes the water. Near the mouth of a river, the sea becomes brackish, less salty. You watch all of this with fascination. The captain is not just following a map. He is reading the world, interpreting the signs that the ocean and sky provide. It is a skill born of experience, passed down from sailor to sailor, and it is what keeps the ship from becoming lost in the vastness. One evening, you stand beside the captain as he takes his measurements. The sun is setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors. He holds the quadrant up to his eye, adjusting it carefully until the reflected image of the sun aligns with the horizon. He reads the angle and nods to himself, satisfied. Another day, another position calculated. Another step closer to the next prize, or the next port, or wherever this life may take you. For a time, it feels as though the pirate's life could go on forever. Your crew takes prizes, divides the plunder, and spends wildly in the havens before returning to sea. The cycle repeats, and it seems as though nothing can stop it. But the world is changing, and the great powers of Europe have decided that they have tolerated piracy long enough. The first sign of the shift comes in the form of a proclamation. You are ashore in one of the havens when a man arrives with news. The King of England has issued a pardon. Any pirate who surrenders to a colonial governor before a certain date will be forgiven. All crimes, no matter how serious, will be wiped away. It is an offer of amnesty, a chance to return to lawful society. The news spreads quickly through the settlement, and it divides the pirate community. Some men, particularly the older ones, see it as a gift. They are tired of the constant danger, the uncertainty. They have made their money, or enough of it, and they want to live out their remaining years in peace. They begin to make plans to accept the pardon, to sail to a colonial port, swear an oath of allegiance, and disappear into ordinary life. But others are suspicious. They do not trust the government's promises. They believe the pardon is a trap, a way to lure pirates into the open so they can be arrested and hanged. And even if the offer is genuine, they are not ready to give up their freedom. They have tasted life outside the rules, and they cannot go back. The debate rages in the taverns and on the beaches. Friendships are strained. Crews begin to fracture as some men choose to accept the pardon and others refuse. Your own crew is divided. The older hands, men who have been at sea for years, are leaning toward acceptance. The younger men, including you, are inclined to stay the course. But the decision is complicated by the second part of the government's strategy. Along with the pardons, they are sending warships. Powerful naval frigates, captained by experienced officers and manned by disciplined crews. Their mission is simple: hunt down and destroy the pirates who refuse to surrender. You hear the stories before you see the ships. A pirate sloop was caught off the coast of Jamaica and sunk. Another was chased into a bay and burned. The survivors were captured and hanged. The Royal Navy is not playing games. They are bringing the full might of the British Empire to bear, and they are winning. One day, you are at sea when the lookout's cry sends a chill through the crew. Sail ho! But this time, the tone is different. It is not excitement. It is fear. The captain takes the spyglass and studies the approaching ship. His face goes pale. It is a naval frigate. The frigate is larger than your sloop, and it is built for war. It carries far more cannons, and its crew is trained for battle. Your ship is fast, but the frigate is fast too, and it is already positioned to cut off your escape. The captain makes the only decision he can: run. The chase is desperate. Your crew works frantically, adjusting every sail, straining to squeeze every bit of speed from the ship. The frigate pursues relentlessly, and it is gaining. You can see the figures on its deck, can see the cannons being rolled into position. Your heart is pounding. This is not a merchant ship. This is a predator, and you are the prey. For hours, the chase continues. The frigate fires its bow chasers, long cannons designed to shoot forward. The cannonballs splash into the water around your ship, each one a near miss. You are close to the shore now, and the captain makes a gamble. He steers the ship into a narrow channel between two islands, a passage he knows is shallow. The frigate, with its deeper hull, cannot follow. It is forced to break off, and you escape. But the message is clear. The age of easy piracy is over. The hunters are here, and they are skilled, determined, and well armed. The life you have been living is no longer sustainable. Back at the haven, the mood is changed. The news of the near capture spreads, and it adds weight to the arguments of those who want to accept the pardon. More men begin to peel away, sailing to colonial ports to surrender. The brotherhood is fracturing. Your captain calls a meeting of the remaining crew. He is blunt. The world is closing in. The Navy is hunting them. The safe harbors are becoming less safe as governors crack down. He puts it to a vote, as the articles require. Should they continue, or should they accept the pardon? The vote is close, but in the end, the majority chooses to continue. You vote to stay, unable to imagine returning to the world you left behind. But you know, as everyone does, that this decision has consequences. The life of a pirate, always dangerous, has just become far more so. The most bitter pill to swallow comes not from the Royal Navy, but from within the pirate community itself. Some of the men who have accepted the pardon do not simply retire. They become pirate hunters, working for the governors, using their knowledge of pirate tactics, hideouts, and weaknesses to track down their former brothers. The most famous of these turncoats is a man named Benjamin Hornigold. He was once a respected pirate captain, a mentor to some of the most notorious names in piracy. But he has accepted the pardon, and now he sails for the governor of the Bahamas, hunting the very men he once led. The news of his betrayal spreads like wildfire through the remaining pirate crews. It is seen as the ultimate treachery, a violation of the unspoken code. To attack a merchant ship is one thing. To hunt your own brothers is something else entirely. Hornigold is not alone. Other former pirates, lured by the promise of money and pardons, join the hunt. They know where the pirates hide. They know the routes they sail. They know how they think. And they use this knowledge to devastating effect. Your crew learns that one of the pirate havens has been raided. A former pirate, now working for the authorities, led a force of soldiers and sailors to the settlement. They arrested dozens of men, many of whom had been considering the pardon themselves. The prisoners were taken to a colonial port and tried. Most were hanged. The sense of betrayal is profound. The pirate world, already under pressure from the Navy, is now being torn apart from within. Trust, which was always the foundation of the pirate brotherhood, is eroding. Men who were once brothers now eye each other with suspicion. Who might be the next to turn? Who might betray the crew for a pardon and a reward? The atmosphere on the ship changes. There is less laughter, less camaraderie. The work continues, but the joy has gone out of it. The world that you joined, a world of freedom and brotherhood, is collapsing, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. As the pressure mounts, your crew faces the same choice that every pirate crew must eventually confront. How does this end? The options are limited, and none of them are good. The first option is to accept the pardon. More and more men are choosing this path. It means surrendering, swearing loyalty to the king, and hoping that the promise of forgiveness is genuine. For some, it works. They disappear into colonial society, becoming farmers, tradesmen, or sailors on legitimate merchant ships. Their wild days are over, but they are alive. But the pardon is not a guarantee of safety. Some men who surrender are betrayed by vengeful governors or by former victims who recognize them. They are arrested and hanged despite the promises of amnesty. It is a gamble, and the stakes are your life. The second option is to continue as you are, to keep sailing, keep taking prizes, and hope that you can stay ahead of the Navy and the pirate hunters. This is what your crew has chosen, but you know it is not sustainable. Every day, the risks grow. Every sail on the horizon could be a warship. Every port could be a trap. The third option is to fight to the end. Some pirate captains, the most notorious and the most desperate, choose this path. When cornered by the Navy, they do not surrender. They fight, knowing that capture means the noose. For them, it is better to die with a weapon in hand than to dance at the end of a rope. The famous pirate Blackbeard meets his end this way, killed in a brutal close-quarters battle with a naval lieutenant and his men. And then there is the dream, the one that every pirate harbors, but few achieve. To take your plunder, disappear, and live out your days in comfort and anonymity. To retire as a wealthy man, perhaps in a distant colony, where no one knows your face or your past. It is the dream of every pirate, but the reality is almost impossible. The money is spent too quickly. The havens are disappearing, and the world is too small to hide in forever. You do not know which path you will take. For now, You continue to sail, continue to work, continue to hope that the next prize will be the big one, the one that will set you up for life. But in the quiet moments, when you are alone in your hammock or standing watch under the stars, you think about the future, and you wonder how your own story will end. Even as the golden age of piracy comes to a close, even as the last of the pirate crews are hunted down and destroyed, the legend is already beginning to grow. The stories are being written down, exaggerated, transformed from grim reality into thrilling adventure. One book, published in 1724, becomes a sensation. It is called A General History of the Robberies and Murders of the Most Notorious Pirates, written by a mysterious author using the name Captain Charles Johnson. No one knows his true identity, but his work will define piracy for centuries to come. The book is part history, part fiction. Johnson clearly spoke to sailors, to survivors, to men who knew the pirate world. His descriptions of pirate articles, of daily life at sea, of the ships and the tactics, all ring true. But he is also a storyteller, and he embellishes, invents, and dramatizes. He takes the real pirates, men like Blackbeard and Calico Jack, and turns them into larger-than-life characters. He gives them dramatic speeches, cunning plans, and theatrical deaths. The book is wildly popular, and it becomes the foundation of the pirate legend. For generations, this is how people will understand piracy, through the lens of Johnson's dramatic narrative. But the transformation from history to myth does not stop there. In the 19th century, a new generation of writers takes the pirate legend and makes it even more romantic. The most influential is Robert Louis Stevenson, who publishes Treasure Island in 1883. His novel introduces the tropes that will define piracy in the popular imagination. The buried treasure, the secret map with X marking the spot, the one-legged ship's cook with a parrot on his shoulder. None of these things were common in real piracy, but they become the defining images. And then comes Hollywood. In the 20th century, films take the pirate legend and make it visual. Actors like Errol Flynn create the image of the swashbuckler, the charming, acrobatic hero who fights with a sword and always wins. Pirates are no longer dangerous criminals. They are romantic adventurers. You, had you lived to see it, would not recognize the world that these stories portray. The real pirate's life was not one of constant adventure and buried treasure. It was hard work, bad food, and the constant threat of death. But the myth is more powerful than the reality, and the myth is what survives. The pirates of the Golden Age left behind more than just legends. They left a mark on the very language we speak. Many of the words and phrases we use today in business and commerce have their roots in the pirate world. The word bank comes from the Italian banca, meaning bench. It was the bench or table that a merchant would set up in a public square to conduct his business. The pirates, many of whom were involved in the trade and sale of captured goods, used these same benches in their havens. Accounting terms like debit and credit were perfected in the ledger books of ship captains and quartermasters. The meticulous record-keeping required to divide plunder fairly led to innovations in bookkeeping that would influence the development of modern accounting. And the word quarantine has a direct link to the maritime world. It comes from the Italian 40 giorni, meaning 40 days. This was the period that ships suspected of carrying disease were required to wait at anchor before being allowed into port. It was a practice born from the constant threat of plague and other illnesses that traveled on ships, and it was enforced rigidly in every major port. These words and others are the quiet legacy of the maritime world. They are reminders that the age of sail, for all its brutality and danger, was also a time of innovation and adaptation. The pirates, despite being outlaws, were part of this world, and their influence, however small, remains with us today. As the years pass and the stories grow, certain pirate legends become so entrenched that they are accepted as fact. But the reality, as you lived it, was often quite different from what the stories claim. Take the legend of buried treasure. The image of a pirate captain with a treasure map marking the spot where a chest of gold is buried on a deserted island is one of the most enduring pirate myths. But in your experience, this almost never happened. The entire point of taking plunder was to spend it, not to bury it. The pirate philosophy was always about living for today. Why would you bury your hard-earned coins in the ground when you could be spending them on rum, food, and good times in the nearest haven? The one famous exception, the case that spawned the entire legend, was Captain William Kidd. Kidd was not quite a pirate in the traditional sense. He was a privateer, a legal pirate hired by the government with a letter of marque to attack enemy ships during wartime. But when he turned to outright piracy, he became a wanted man. Knowing he was being hunted, Kidd did bury some of his treasure before attempting to negotiate a pardon. He was captured anyway and hanged. The story of his buried treasure ignited a frenzy of treasure hunting that lasted for generations. But Kidd was the exception, not the rule. For every other pirate, the treasure was spent as quickly as it was earned. Then there is the myth of walking the plank. The image is iconic. A captive, hands bound, forced to walk off a narrow wooden plank extending from the side of the ship into the shark-infested waters below. It is dramatic, theatrical, and almost entirely fictional. There are virtually no reliable historical accounts of this practice during the golden age of piracy. It appears to have been invented by writers in the 19th century, particularly in adventure novels and later in J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan. Pirates could certainly be cruel when they chose to be, particularly to captains who had a reputation for mistreating their crews. But if they wanted to kill someone, they had simpler, more direct methods. A sword thrust, a pistol shot, or simply throwing someone overboard required no elaborate setup. The plank was a theatrical invention, not a historical reality. And then there is the parrot. The image of a pirate captain with a brightly colored parrot perched on his shoulder is so common that it seems inseparable from piracy itself. But once again, this comes almost entirely from fiction, specifically from Treasure Island and the character of Long John Silver with his parrot named Captain Flint. Could a sailor traveling through the Caribbean have acquired a parrot as a pet? Certainly. Parrots were exotic, valuable, and could be sold for a good price in European ports. But the idea that pirates routinely carried parrots on their shoulders as a kind of uniform accessory is nonsense. A noisy, squawking bird would be a terrible companion during a stealthy approach on a merchant ship or during a battle. It would be impractical and annoying. The parrot on the shoulder is a charming image, but it is not history. These myths, and others like them, have become so embedded in our culture that it is almost impossible to separate them from the reality. But the real pirate's life, your life, was defined not by buried treasure, planks, and parrots, but by hard work, democratic governance, and the constant gamble between freedom and the noose. By the mid-1720s, the golden age of piracy is effectively over. The combination of royal pardons, aggressive naval patrols, and the betrayal of former pirates working as hunters has decimated the pirate population. The great havens are being shut down. The safe harbors are no longer safe. In the Bahamas, the pirate haven of Nassau, once a lawless republic where hundreds of pirates lived and traded freely, has been brought under control. A new governor, Woodes Rogers, arrived with warships and a mandate. His motto is simple and chilling: expel the pirates, restore commerce. He offers pardons to those who will take them and death to those who will not. Many pirates accept. Some flee to other havens. A few fight and are killed or captured. The remaining pirate crews are increasingly desperate. They are hunted wherever they go. The merchant ships they once preyed upon now sail in armed convoys, escorted by naval warships. The risk of attacking has grown too high, and the rewards have diminished. Many pirates, faced with the inevitable, choose to retire while they still can. Your own crew faces this same reality. The captain calls a final vote. The ship is worn, the supplies are low, and the prospects are grim. The majority votes to disband. Some men will accept the pardon. Others will try to disappear into the colonies, blending into ordinary life. A few, the most hardened and desperate, will continue to sail, joining other crews or trying to make it on their own. You stand on the deck of the ship for the last time, looking out over the water. This vessel, which has been your home for years, will soon be abandoned or sold. The crew, the brotherhood that you have fought beside, eaten with, and trusted with your life, is scattering to the winds. It is the end of an era, not just for you, but for an entire way of life. You make your choice. You will take the pardon. It is a risk, but staying is an even greater one. You make your way to a colonial port, to the governor's mansion. You stand before the governor, a man in a fine wig and an expensive coat, and you swear an oath. You renounce piracy. You swear loyalty to the king. And in return, you are given a piece of paper, a document that says your crimes are forgiven. You walk out of the mansion a free man, or at least a man no longer hunted. But you know that your life will never be the same. The freedom you tasted, the brotherhood you knew, the wild, reckless joy of those years, all of it is gone. You will live out your days as an ordinary man, and the life you led will slowly fade into memory, and then into legend. Not all pirates chose the pardon. Some, the most famous and the most defiant, chose to fight to the very end. Their stories, traumatic and violent, are the ones that history remembers most vividly. Edward Teach, known to the world as Blackbeard, is perhaps the most famous of them all. He is a large, intimidating man who cultivates his fearsome reputation deliberately. He braids his long black beard and ties slow-burning fuses into it, lighting them before battle so that smoke curls around his face, making him look like a demon rising from hell. It is psychological warfare, and it is devastatingly effective. Blackbeard refuses the pardon. He continues to sail, continues to take prizes, and becomes an obsession for the colonial governors. Alexander Spotswood, the governor of Virginia, finally decides to act. He hires a naval officer, Lieutenant Robert Maynard, and gives him 2 small sloops and orders to hunt Blackbeard down. Maynard finds Blackbeard anchored in a shallow inlet off the coast of North Carolina. At dawn, the 2 forces engage. Blackbeard's ship is faster and better armed, but Maynard is clever. He hides most of his men below deck, making his ship appear undermanned. Blackbeard, seeing an easy target, comes alongside to board. And then Maynard springs the trap. His hidden men pour onto the deck, and a vicious hand-to-hand battle erupts. Blackbeard fights like a demon. He is shot 5 times and slashed with swords more than 20 times, but he keeps fighting. Finally, a sailor comes up behind him and cuts his throat. Blackbeard falls, and the fight is over. Maynard, to prove his victory and to send a message to other pirates, cuts off Blackbeard's head and hangs it from the bowsprit of his ship. The most feared pirate of the age is dead. Another famous pirate, Bartholomew Roberts, known as Black Bart, is perhaps the most successful pirate of the Golden Age. In a career spanning just 3 years, he captures over 400 ships, a record that will never be broken. He is a stern, disciplined man, unusual among pirates. He does not drink alcohol, preferring tea. He enforces strict rules aboard his ship, including a ban on gambling and women. He is a professional, and his success reflects that. But even Black Bart cannot escape the inevitable. In 1722, his ship is intercepted by a British naval vessel off the coast of West Africa. In the ensuing battle, Roberts is struck by grapeshot and killed instantly. His crew, devastated by the loss of their captain, is quickly defeated. The survivors are captured and taken to a colonial port. 52 of them are hanged, the largest mass execution of pirates in history. These men, Blackbeard, Black Bart, and others like them, chose defiance over surrender. They lived by the sword, and they died by it. Their deaths are violent and dramatic, and they become the stuff of legend. But for every famous pirate who went down fighting, there were dozens, perhaps hundreds, of ordinary pirates who simply disappeared, accepting the pardon or vanishing into the colonies to live out their lives in obscurity. For those pirates who are captured and do not have the protection of a pardon, there is only one fate: the trial and the noose. You have heard the stories, and they fill you with dread. When a pirate is captured, he is taken in chains to the nearest major colonial port. There, he is held in a dark, filthy prison, often for months, while the authorities gather evidence and prepare for the trial. The trial itself is not a fair proceeding. It is held in an admiralty court, a special maritime court that operates under different rules than a common criminal trial. There is no jury of your peers. The judges are naval officers and colonial officials, men who have every reason to want you dead. The evidence against you is overwhelming. The captured ship's cargo, the testimony of the merchant sailors you robbed, your own crewmates who have turned informer in hopes of saving their own necks. The trial is a formality. The verdict is almost always the same: guilty, and the sentence is death by hanging. The execution is a public spectacle, designed to serve as a warning to others. On the appointed day, you are taken from the prison and marched through the streets to the gallows. Crowds line the route, cheering, throwing rotten fruit, shouting insults. Some come to gawk, others to jeer, and a few to silently sympathize, for many in the crowd are sailors themselves and understand the thin line between piracy and honest labor. At the gallows, you are given a chance to speak, to make a final statement. Some pirates use this moment to repent, to beg forgiveness from God, and warn others not to follow their path. Others are defiant to the end, cursing the authorities, proclaiming their lack of regret, and declaring that they would do it all again. Then the noose is placed around your neck. The executioner adjusts it carefully, positioning the knot behind your ear. This is not the humane long drop hanging that will be developed later. This is the short drop. When the platform beneath your feet is released, you fall only a few feet. The drop is not enough to break your neck and kill you instantly. Instead, you strangle slowly, your body convulsing, your legs kicking in the air as you fight for breath that will not come. It is called dancing the hempen jig, a grim joke at the expense of the dying. It takes several minutes, minutes that feel like hours, before you finally lose consciousness and die. Your body is not buried. As a further warning, the bodies of the most notorious pirates are placed in iron cages called gibbets and hung at the entrance to the harbor, where every ship entering or leaving must pass by. The body is left to rot in the open air, picked apart by birds, bleached by the sun, until nothing remains but bones. It is a message to every sailor who sees it. This is what happens to pirates. But even this horror does not deter everyone. As long as the conditions that drive men to piracy exist, there will always be those willing to take the risk. The brutality of merchant and naval service, the poverty, the lack of opportunity, these are the true causes of piracy. And until they are addressed, the noose will never be enough to stop it entirely. As the golden age draws to a close, it is worth reflecting on the fates of the men who chose this life. For every pirate, there were only a few possible endings, and none of them were particularly good. Some, the lucky ones, accepted the pardon and disappeared into ordinary life. They became farmers, shopkeepers, sailors on legitimate merchant ships. They lived out their remaining years in obscurity, their wild pasts a secret they took to their graves. For these men, the pirate life was a chapter, not the entire book. Others were killed in battle, either fighting naval vessels or in desperate conflicts with other pirate crews. For them, the end was quick and violent. Perhaps in some way, this was the best fate. They died with a weapon in their hand, free men to the very end. Many more died of disease or accident. The sea was an unforgiving environment, and death from fever, dysentery, or a fall from the rigging was common. These deaths were less dramatic than a battle, but no less final. And then there were those who were captured and hanged. They faced the public humiliation of the trial, the jeering crowds, and the slow strangulation at the end of the noose. Their bodies were left to rot as a warning to others. It was the worst fate of all, and it was the fate that most pirates feared above all others. But in the end, every pirate knew the bargain they had made. A short life, but a merry one. They had chosen freedom, brotherhood, and a voice over the grinding misery of the merchant service. They had lived more intensely in a few years than most men live in a lifetime. And when the end came, whether at the end of a rope or the point of a sword, they faced it knowing they had lived on their own terms. 300 years have passed since the golden age of piracy came to an end, and yet the fascination with pirates has never faded. If anything, it has grown stronger with each passing generation. But why? What is it about this brief, violent period that continues to capture the imagination of people around the world? Perhaps it is the idea of freedom. The pirate's life, for all its dangers, was a life lived outside the rules. In an age of rigid social hierarchies, where your birth determined your fate, the pirate ship was a place where a man's worth was judged by his actions, not his bloodline. The articles of piracy, with their guarantee of equal votes and fair shares, were revolutionary. They represented a form of democracy that was far more radical than anything that existed in the civilized world of the 18th century. Or perhaps it is the idea of rebellion. Pirates were outlaws, enemies of all established authority. They rejected kings, governments, and the brutal system that had oppressed them. They chose to live by their own rules, and for that they were hunted and killed. But in choosing rebellion, they became symbols of resistance, of the refusal to accept an unjust world. There is also the undeniable appeal of adventure. The pirate's life was one of travel, of seeing distant shores and exotic lands. It was a life of action, of battles and chases and narrow escapes. In our modern world, where so much of life is routine and predictable, the idea of such an existence holds a powerful allure. But perhaps the deepest reason for our fascination is simpler. The pirate's life, for all its brutality and brevity, was a life lived fully. Pirates did not save for tomorrow. They did not plan for a future that might never come. They lived in the moment with intensity and passion. And in our own lives, where we are constantly told to save, to plan, to defer gratification, there is something deeply appealing about a life lived with such reckless abandon. The pirates of the Golden Age were not heroes. They were criminals, often brutal ones. But they were also men who made a choice, who rejected a life of oppression and chose freedom, even knowing the price they would pay. And that choice, that willingness to gamble everything for a taste of liberty, is what makes their story timeless. The pirate's life, as you lived it, has long since passed into history. The ships have rotted away, the havens have been reclaimed by civilization, and the men who sailed under the black flag are dust. But the legacy remains, not just in the myths and legends, but in the real changes that the pirate world helped to inspire. The democratic principles that governed pirate ships, the idea that every man should have a voice and a fair share, were radical for their time. These ideas, born of necessity on the decks of outlaw vessels, would later find expression in the democratic movements that swept through the world in the centuries that followed. The American and French revolutions, with their emphasis on equality and the rights of man, drew on similar principles. The pirates were not political philosophers, but in their practical, day-to-day governance, they created a working model of democracy that was far ahead of its time. The compensation system for injured pirates, which guaranteed that a man who lost a limb in the service of the crew would be cared for, was a precursor to modern workers' compensation and disability insurance. It was a recognition that those who took risks on behalf of the group deserved to be protected. This idea, so foreign to the brutal world of 18th century labor, would eventually become a cornerstone of the labor movement. And the pirates' rejection of arbitrary authority, their insistence that power should be limited and that leaders should be accountable, these too were ideas that would resonate through history. The pirates did not set out to change the world. They simply wanted to survive and to live with dignity. But in doing so, they created something that mattered. The real pirates, not the romanticized versions of legend, were flawed, often violent men who lived in desperate times. But they were also men who refused to accept the world as it was handed to them. They chose to build something different, even if only on the deck of a single ship. And in that choice, there is something worth remembering. You are an old man now. The years have been kind enough to let you survive when so many of your brothers did not. You took the pardon, slipped back into the world, and made a quiet life. You have a small house, a trade, perhaps a family. You are no longer a pirate. You are no longer even a sailor. But the sea is still in your blood. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, you walk down to the harbor and stand at the edge of the dock, looking out over the water. A smell of salt and tar brings it all back. The creak of the rigging, the snap of the canvas, the shouts of your crewmates, the thrill of the chase, the fear and exhilaration of boarding an enemy ship, the weight of silver coins in your hand, fairly divided, honestly earned, the songs in the tavern, the laughter, the brotherhood. You remember the faces of men you sailed with. Tom, who showed you the ship on your first day. The quartermaster, who read the articles and welcomed you into the company. The captain, who navigated by the stars and led you through storms. You do not know what became of most of them. Some took the pardon like you. Others were killed or captured. A few, you suspect, are still out there, sailing under false names, living on the margins of the world. You do not regret your choice. You have lived to see old age, something most pirates never do. But there is a part of you that misses it. The freedom, the simplicity, the knowledge that every day could be your last, so you lived every day to the fullest. The world has moved on. The great age of piracy is over, relegated to history books and tavern tailies. The ships are gone, the havens are quiet, and the black flag no longer strikes fear into the hearts of merchant sailors. But you remember? And in your memories, the wind still fills the sails. The deck still rolls beneath your feet, and you are still young, still free, still a pirate. You turn away from the water and make your way home. The sea will always be there, patient and eternal. But your time on it has passed. You have lived a life that few could imagine, survived what few could survive, and kept your secrets. And that, perhaps, is enough. And so our journey into the pirate's life comes to an end. We have walked the decks of their ships, shared their food, lived by their laws, and faced their dangers. We have seen the reality behind the legends, the hard work behind the romance, and the surprising democracy behind the lawlessness. The golden age of piracy was brief, lasting only a few decades in the early 18th century. But in that short time, thousands of men chose to leave behind the brutal world of merchant sailing and naval service to build something different. They created floating republics governed by democratic principles that were centuries ahead of their time. They treated each other with a fairness and respect that was unheard of in the world they had left behind. Their lives were short, often violent, and always dangerous. But they were lived with an intensity and freedom that few people in that age could claim. They were not heroes, not in the traditional sense. They were criminals, outlaws, men who broke the laws of every nation. But they were also men who refused to accept injustice, who chose freedom over security, and who built a brotherhood based on equality and mutual respect. The reality of the pirate's life was far from the romantic legend. There were no treasure maps, no parrots on shoulders, no walking of planks. There was hard work, bad food, disease, and the constant threat of the noose. But there was also something real and valuable, a chance to have a voice, a chance to receive fair treatment, a chance to live as a free man, even if only for a little while. The stories we tell about pirates, the myths and legends, will always be more colorful than the truth. But the truth, as we have discovered tonight, is perhaps even more interesting. It is a story of ordinary men in extraordinary circumstances, of the choices they made and the prices they paid. It is a reminder that even in the darkest times, people can create systems of fairness and justice, even if those systems exist only on the deck of an outlaw ship. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the past. I hope that the story of these men, their lives, their choices, and their brief moment of freedom has brought a new understanding to the history of the golden age of piracy. Until we meet again to explore another corner of history, I wish you calm seas and a peaceful night.